delay doing things they don't like for longer than it takes to do them.
There have been so many times in my life where I knew I needed to do something, and then I filled all this extra time not doing that thing. And then the moment I did it, I was like, wow, that took way less time than I thought it was going to take. And not only that, it took way less time than it took me to delay to actually get to this point. And if I had only started with just doing what I was supposed to do, I could have done 4 or 5 other things that I was also supposed to do by this exact same point. And so thinking about it from that perspective, I've tried to eliminate as much time between I think I should do this thing and beginning doing it. And I think you get this positive reinforcement cycle that occurs every time you start. I call it pulling the thread. It's like, I just need to start pulling the thread. And then all of a sudden what feels really unknown becomes very tangible. And you're like, oh, I understand the 6 problems I have to solve to do this big thing. But now I know the problems. And then it feels like you can wrap your arms around it. And then you can start taking it one bite at a time.
This same thing works in reverse as well, that when you put something off, it makes putting it off more mañana.
I used to define power by the distance between thoughts and reality. Meaning, if you think about somebody who's omnipotent, so if God or the God figure would be omnipotent as he thinks things are. So there's zero space between thoughts and reality. And so if we want to be more godlike in our lives, the distance that we can shrink between wanting to do something or thinking something should be done and it being done is a direct indication of our personal power in our lives. And so that has helped me basically think, don't be a powerless bitch. Like, just shrink the gap. And I think that's why a lot of my little like personal hacks of waking up and then trying to shrink the time between when I wake up and when I start working, and shrinking the time between one task and the next task. Like, you don't need to take 30 minutes of getting ready to start working. Like, you can just start working, because as soon as you get into it, you start pulling the thread and you're like, oh, here it is. And all of the time that I was getting ready to work, I was just using up my best brain power time on things that truly don't move the needle at all.
Yeah, I came to call that the productivity rain dance.
Yeah, right.
That you sort of do this weird sacred ritual beforehand.
Yeah.
And we've spoken about this before, but it's, there are certain things that you can do that will make success or productivity or focus more likely and better.
Totally.
That doesn't mean that you should disregard them. That over-reliance on them makes a very fragile, unrobust way to get into working.
I would delineate the difference between preparation and routine.
Yeah. Magic you're looking for is in the work you're avoiding all the time. Every single time that we're not making progress in this way, what is the highest pain task that's in front of me that I've put off the most? It's always that one. It always is. After you spend enough time thinking about work and deconstructing the way that you piece your day and your life together, you sometimes believe that the answer is still out there. And what you actually realize is that you've already learned it. And it's like, it's that quote or that insight or that book. It's one of the first books you read, because all of the big insights from productivity and personal development are the lowest hanging fruit. They're the ones that are repeated across the most books because they're the most reliable, scalable, and robust. It's like, I don't need to be looking out there for most of the new insights. They're just shit that I already learned.
Yeah, we need to be reminded more than we need to be taught. It's one of my favorites.
Bad things don't come in threes. Bad things happen. People don't know how to cope, and they allow one bad thing to snowball into more. Bad stuff sucks. The only thing worse is letting one bad thing ruin many good things.
I'm glad you found that one. That was one on that list of things that, quotes I wish had gone more viral. The amount of, I think it happens more when you're younger, but, girlfriend breaks up with you. Okay, then you go into work and you sulk because you're distracted, and then you don't do the same level of effort and you're not enthusiastic. And then all of a sudden your work suffers and you get put on a PIP or you get fired. And then now you're fired and you don't have a girlfriend, and then you start gaining weight and you stop going to the gym. And all of a sudden you're like, man, bad things happen in threes. It's like, no, bad things happen all the time, and they only become interrelated if you let it affect your behavior. And so I think the equal opposite of that is thinking, okay, this bad thing occurred. What can I do to decrease the likelihood something else bad occurs in the meantime? And then boiling everything down to activities or the actions that I have to take. And I think about that actually a lot. which is how, like, if you think about it from the power perspective of, okay, something bad happens, how much would it affect my behavior? Well, the person who's indestructible would have something terrible happen and then nothing would change. And I love
Or they'd
that.
get better.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's anti-fragility, right?
Yeah. The sword of Gryffindor, it only drinks in that which makes it stronger.
Fucking Harry Potter reference. Weren't expecting that. Yeah, the people don't know how to cope thing, especially with bad stuff, is it does explain why you end up with this weird spiral. Tiny little avalanche pebble at the top, and then this huge sort of over-exaggerated reaction downstream. Sutherland says, sometimes you just want to stand in the corner and stare out of the window. The problem is, when you're not smoking and staring out of the window, you're an antisocial, friendless idiot. If you stand and stare out of the window with a cigarette, you're a fucking philosopher. The power of reframing things cannot be overstated. It's significantly easier to find a way to reframe your experiences as enjoyable while you improve them, rather than waiting for them to be done before you give yourself license to be happy.
So a friend of mine, she's a very, very successful therapist, and she always asks her patients when they come to her and say some terrible thing happened. She said, what would it take for this to be amazing? And so, for example, lady comes, says, we're getting a divorce. And she says, so what would it take for this to be amazing? And so it just completely shifts the reality of like, okay, how could this be an amazing thing that could happen to me? And this is relevant for me, shifting gears, because we just had a big tryout inside of our company for a presentation slot that we have an event. So we had a bunch of the leaders in the company.
There was like the fucking Hunger Games.
Yeah, we put a cash prize out.
Fight to the death, pitchforks.
We did. No, we put a big cash prize out there. Oh yeah, I totally did that. I told her, I was like, I'll have no expression,
just in a toga.
Yeah, exactly. And I could tell that some of them were nervous. And I thought about this because I speak a fair amount, and I don't get a lot of nerves in general, and I have a whole bunch of thoughts on that. But the most basic one is that if you're still feeling anxiety, which many of them were like, hey, I'm so nervous, or hey, I have a lot of anxiety before going up. I thought about it, and champions just interpret anxiety as excitement. And if you're excited to go up, then you're like, I'm amped versus I'm stressed. But it feels the same, but the way you frame it totally changes how you feel when you're stepping on stage. But my 2 cents of, if you are feeling lots of anxiety, it means you need to practice more. That's just my 2 cents. And that comes for everything, whether it's to have a meeting or give a presentation or write an email or do a book. Like if you feel nervous before you release it, then you probably didn't work on it enough. And I think the reality is that most people, to get not anxious about whatever they're doing, you have to do it so many times that by the last time you're doing it, you're bored of it. Like you don't even want to see the thing again. When you're sick of it is the point where you'll have no adrenal response to the stimulus because you've seen it so many times. You could do it in your sleep because you hate it at this point. And then when you get up, you're like, oh my God, let's just do this because I can breathe this thing
over with.
Yeah.
What's the gap between your expectation of what is going to happen and the requirement that you need to perform, right? This is where I need to be, and this is how I think I'm going to perform, as opposed to the other way. So I saw this firsthand
during the year of the sale when I couldn't really work on the business because you don't want to change anything major when you're going through a sale. But I didn't know if I was going to be owning this business soon. So I basically just had to do nothing because I also had to demonstrate that the team could do it without me. So that's still a sellable asset. So I basically just sat there for a year. And that's when a lot of my thoughts kind of caught up from, when I had started years earlier. And that was when I kind of refined my kind of theory of living for me, which is that hard work is the goal. And so it's not like work hard so that X. Because as soon as you have a so that, then the X is the thing. But if the goal is to work as hard as you possibly can, then the only real output we have is who we become along the way. And so in reframing that, then it's something that I can win or measure myself against every day in real time throughout the day, which is how hard am I working? Because that is the goal. And then even I say this just for audio, but everything else takes care of itself, still puts the everything else as the goal still. It's just being vaguer. But if you just say the only point is working hard because I know that whatever I'm going to get is stuff that I will become accustomed to. And the, I guess, opposite of the hedonic treadmill is like the resilience piece, is that my ability to work hard itself is growable. And so I just need to keep my RP, my rate of perceived exertion, at 8 or 9 or 10, because I know that when I look back on my life, the days that I loved the most were days when I had nothing left in the tank. And there's this thing that Jesse Itzler has this, and I love it. I hate him for having it because it's so fucking good. But he taught us to his kids, which is they have a little zero, means that there's nothing left in the tank. And when they finish a race or they do whatever, it's like, did you leave anything in the tank? And I thought about that, and the best days of my life were ones when I had nothing left in the tank. And so then the goal becomes to empty the tank, not where I drive, but just to drive the car as hard as I possibly can. And that means that in the beginning, it's just straightaways and just seeing how high I can rev the engine. But as I become more advanced, it's like, all right, well, now we've got turns, and then it's turns in elevation, and then it's turns in elevation without guardrails because we have risk. And so when I think about how hard I want to work, the interesting thing about that is that the only person who can judge you on your success is you, because you're the only one who knows how much left in the tank you really had. And the better you get, and you can resonate with this, you start winning exteriorly. And that's when people are like, it felt so empty. It's because they didn't actually work as hard as they could have. They just worked hard enough to beat everyone else. But that discrepancy between how hard you could have worked to work your hardest versus what was required in order to win, to me, that's the opportunity that shifting towards the work being the goal unlocks for you. And I